Awesome.
Okay, yeah, we're recording. Okay, hello guys. My name is Thomas Brush, and I make indie games for a living. Most of you know that, but you might not know David. David also makes indie games for a living, and I was talking to David before we started the podcast, and I love how David is just sort of he's made it happen. He's made it work, and he kind of took the plunge. So, David, tell me a little bit about yourself, really quick, what you're working on, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Yeah. Hi. Again, I'm Dave Mauro, and I'm working on a game called Little Nemo and the Guardians of Slumberland. And it's a 2D hand-drawn platformer Metroidvania game. And yeah, I've been working on it for a couple of years, and just now I'm trying to raise some funds. I've got a Kickstarter running right now, and we're aiming to release the game in Q4 of next year.
Nice, nice. It looks like your Kickstarter campaign is doing really well. So I'm gonna really quickly give a breakdown of this podcast. Really, what I want to cover is how you were probably doing pretty good at your previous job.
Yeah.
Things were probably going pretty good for you. Do you mind telling where you were working?
I was working at BuzzFeed.
Okay, so you're working at BuzzFeed. Things were going good for BuzzFeed for a while there, and it sounds like life was good. And then all of a sudden, you took this really kind of risky plunge into game dev. So I want to talk about that and how my audience, I mean, not everybody can do this, but how my audience can replicate what you're doing, because it's so funny. The more people I talk to on this podcast, the more I realize people are making games full time. They're funded full time before they even finish their games. So I want to talk about that. I'm going to run a quick intro really quick, David, and then we'll jump into that conversation.
Great.
By the way, guys, feel free to download my free 2D game kit below. It's totally free. It's my treat to you. I used this exact 2D game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and then I got to play it in front of his subscribers, which was really awesome. So download that. Use it however you want. It's my treat to you. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to jump right over to your Kickstarter campaign. I think is really good to show right now your Kickstarter campaign. Tell me a little bit about the Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, I've been working on it for a while. It's mostly me working on this, but it represents a lot of feedback from a lot of people, a lot of friends, strangers, various people like Chris. They gave me feedback early on how to run this, and I just spent the most of like the better part of this year has been kind of like getting to this point. So it's been a lot of work, just like creating graphics, tweaking things, kind of making sure I'm telling the right story, putting together a trailer. And these are all things that I had never had experience with. So I'm also anytime I'm doing something like video editing, that's me like learning how to do it for the first time, baked in
Right.
into it as a cost. But yeah, it's yeah, just trying to kind of paint a picture of the game in animations and drawings and stuff as much as possible, and then a bit of text as well.
I'm looking at this Kickstarter campaign right now, man. This is like one of the best campaigns I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you.
The animated GIFs in the body content are super premium. How long did you say this took to make this campaign?
I've been working like most of this year has been like focused on the campaign. I mean, that also represents like I go in and out of different things. Like I also put together a demo of the game to go out to content creators this year as well. But like much of like my time just like this year has been focused not even on the game so much as just getting that page together and looking as good as I can make it.
So for those of you who are watching the podcast right now, you might be wondering why my screen is in like the Kickstarter campaign for some reason, dude, is in Dutch. I have no idea why, but
I had that problem with Kickstarter where it goes into another language rant. It's like if you looked at a Dutch page before, it suddenly is like locked into that language.
Does it do that for you?
Yeah, I've had that happen
I
before.
don't get it, and it's always a different language.
Yeah.
So yeah, for clarity here though, $47,123 US, correct?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's incredible,
Yeah.
dude. I mean, I'm really really proud of you. So, how long has the campaign been going?
It's we're doing a short campaign, only 3 weeks. And so it's
Huh?
actually going to be over in 7 days on June 30th. So we're just shy of it'll be 2 weeks tomorrow that it's been running.
Yeah.
So this week has been kind of that lull that you get with Kickstarters.
Oh
We
yeah.
launched. We had a really big launch, which was great because we actually were a part of the Day of the Devs event. We
No
are the
way.
one more thing reveal, and Peter Berkman, who's doing the soundtrack, he did a performance, and that was like a little kind of show that little performance video with some gameplay layered over top. And so I think we got a lot of people coming in from that. The followers I had accrued over the last year or so of pushing the Twitter handle.
Okay.
And
So, a
yeah,
couple things to clarify here. And, this podcast is all about basically, helping my audience know how to do what you're doing. Because,
yeah,
dude, you've officially made it. Like you're at a position now where people are like, well, how do I do what David did? How do I replicate that? So, my question is, were you full time before this campaign?
yes, yeah. I've
Okay.
I've actually been working full time for a couple of years on this project.
How? I mean, I'm sure you have rent, stuff like that.
Yeah,
So, what's going
it's
on?
it's a kind of a combination of like reducing living expenses as much as possible, right?
AKA
That
living in
game dev life,
poverty.
but also I worked as an engineer for about a decade, wanting to do this and thinking maybe someday I'll, be able to afford to take the plunge. So essentially, it's just kind of like saved up enough to be able to like kind of invest in myself to take this plunge.
Okay. Can you give you don't have to tell us how much money you have, but can you give us a recommendation? Let's say we're not living in New York City, right? But like just a
Yeah.
normal, affordable city in America. What kind of savings should people have before they just like? And by the way, we're not recommending you take the plunge. I would never recommend anybody just quit their job to make games. But if they were going to do it, how much do they need to serve? Like what was that like? What did you decide on? Like how much did you need?
It was just kind of like it was a gut feeling. Like my kind of feeling is like, oh, it's never going to be enough. Like I'll never have enough save to do it. And so
Yeah.
it was more kind of about the time being right. Like I realized like I really want to do this,
Yep.
and I'm getting, I'm a bit older. So
How
it's
old are
it's
you?
like I kind of need to do this now. But I think like, for anybody else, I think what you would need to do is just I'm really good personally at budgeting and keeping track of my spending. So if you're able to, if you're, say, working a job right now and you kind of have enough money to get by, consider tracking your expenses and see how much you're saving, how much you could stand to save.
Yeah.
And then kind of you could start to put together a budget and understand what your annual expenses are. And then you'll be able to know like here's my runway. If I left my job right now and made games, here's how long I would have to make the game before I either had to sell it or seek more funding,
Yeah.
etc.
Okay, so three questions for you. It's gonna
Mhm.
spitball them really quick. How old are you?
41.
41. Okay, you don't look 41. I'm
You
sure you'll
can't see
get
the
that a
grays, I guess.
lot. You look about 28, which is congratulations. I know I look about 16, but um, the second question though is, what are you thinking? Like, I think my audience might want a specific number: 3 months, 4 months of salary. Like, what's the kind of feeling that you had?
I I mean, for me, I was like, I want a year at least of
Okay.
being able to do this, and because I've been working on this. I think it would depend on what you're trying to do. I um I have this problem of like just kind of I tried to rein in scope early on what I was going to do because I know I'm gonna over engineer everything and just kind of overdo it.
Yeah.
So I've definitely spent way longer on this game so far than I meant to, and
Yep.
so I think you need to be prepared. I think that's the same story you're gonna hear from a lot of other devs. You constantly need to be like challenging yourself to cut down your scope and reduce how long things are going to take.
Yep.
So figure how long you want the game to take and then double or triple that for what you
Yep.
need for your savings.
Okay. That makes total sense. Now the third question is, I want my audience to know the majority. Oh man, this is hard to say. The majority of you, if everybody watching this video quit their job tomorrow, had enough in savings for a year, quit their job tomorrow and made a game, the majority of you would not make much money on your games. Do you think that's true, David?
Yeah, it's
It's so
don't
sad, but
do
I
it.
want to be honest with my audience, you know?
Don't do it with the hope of making money. That's like I said, like it wasn't about like, oh, I'm gonna, I have this budget and here's how I'm gonna make money doing game dev. It's like, look, I've always wanted to do this. I've been working for the last 10 years. I think I could, I trust in my ability to try and make a game, right? And make enough to like scrape by. That's all I'm trying to do, right? So it's like you need to have the interest to be willing to kind of take like what in my case I'm sure will be like an absurd salary cut, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
um you need to I don't know, not care that much about money and just
Yeah.
want to do the game, the game dev thing.
If 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 you guys, the audience, I'm talking to the audience. If you guys want to know if your game is going to make good money, a Kickstarter campaign is a great way to know. So from what I can gather, my estimation, and this is, I'm not a genie here, but my estimation is if you made 47, you'll probably end up at like 65 minimum. I mean, if
Yeah,
like
that's what we're shooting.
65, $65,000 gross on your Kickstarter campaign. That means you'll probably end up with minimum 300,000 lifetime gross US sales on Steam. I'm just guessing based on my experience. So that's not bad. It's like, hey, that's pretty good. It's like that's six figures a year on well, 70% of the 100%. They're going to take 30%, Steam is.
Right.
But that's like minimum, right? So it's like, that's pretty good. I think that it's a great indicator of how your game is going to do, is Kickstarter. The second indicator is a publisher. So especially a publisher like Tiny Build. Like let's say Tiny Build sent you a contract for Little Nemo, and they're like, we're going to give you 200 grand. They obviously think that the game is going to make that minimum. Now, they're probably looking at, I'm going to make a guesstimate here. They want 2.5 times that at least on the game. So they're thinking, I don't know what that number is, but like 600 grand or something. I don't know. So I'm just throwing random numbers out here just to give you guys an idea that a publisher is another great way to know if your game is going to make good money. Even if they just send you an email saying, hey, here's our budget of what we think we're willing to pay you. That's a great, you don't even have to sign the agreement. You can just go, man, that means they think my game is worth it, right? And the third, sorry, I'm rambling here, but the third way to know if your game is going to be successful is when you have a social media audience. They're going to be able to tell you just through clicks and through comments and engagement of your social media posts, you're going to know if your game is marketable. And that's a good game. It's great to have a good game, but it's also good to have a game that's marketable. So those are my sort of three ways to know if your game is going to be successful. So have you felt more confidence, David, now that the Kickstarter campaign has done well?
Yeah, I think the first hint of confidence, like you were saying, social media. I've had a Twitter going since I started working on the game, where I would just sort of like detail the stuff before I'd even announced like, oh, this is a Little Nemo game.
Yeah.
I would post videos from it, and there was just no reaction, right? Nobody cared about it, and it was always like slightly kind of difficult to work that. Like I kind of had to just kind of believe in it myself, and I was like,
Yeah.
I think this will be good. And then once I got to a point where the game actually started to look like I had it imagined it, I was able to start spending more time on Twitter and pushing that out, it started getting the kind of reaction that I think sort of made me more encouraged. And so yeah, that was like a big boost of encouragement. It's like, other people would, see my Twitter and I'd be like, oh, I only have like, 1,000 followers. I don't know if that's enough. And, people would tell me like, you're actually getting really good engagement off these posts though. Like I have X followers and don't see this good of an
Yeah.
engagement. So it's like that sort of stuff was like really helpful to sort of gauge that there was some viability.
Yeah.
And especially like, in terms of just how the game looks and appeals to people like at a glance, I think is, going to say a lot about how you do ultimately, because that's such a big part of the marketing in the end, right? It's like it
Yeah.
has to capture someone's attention like at a glance.
How cool would it be? Like, maybe you're not about to understand what I'm about to say, but I'm assuming Yoshi's Island is an inspiration.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
How cool would it?
Much for the visuals more so than the gameplay even. Yeah.
Right, right. How cool would it be if like a genie came up to your house and he was like, or your apartment, he was like, I can send you an email list of everybody who loves Yoshi's Island. Like, can you imagine? You'd make $1,000,000 on the first
I know,
day.
yeah.
And that's the
It's
thing. That's the thing about these kind of games is we're so lucky to be 40 years into the game dev industry, or at least 30. I mean, it's when it was 1980 was when it started, I think. So we're like 40 years into this. So we have the ability to go, I'm just going to make a game that looks like X because there's a built-in audience that was already built. Like it was already there. And so you get to access that audience. The trouble is you got to find it, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah,
how has
which
that
is
been, the audience building?
um it's tough. I kind of it's something I'm not good at. I'm trying to get better at. And so most of my time marketing the game is spent just kind of like tweeting it out and trying to let it get carried through organic traffic. But I've definitely had people tell me tips like, oh, like, yeah, like go search like on Twitter, like search Yoshi's Island and go find those posts and like them, just to kind of so people see what you're doing,
Yeah.
like the Little Nemo community, like find them and yeah, it's very difficult. Like yeah, like you said, if there were a genie, I
Yeah.
think that would be a huge boost. Yeah, just because that's most of what the marketing battle is like getting people to see it, but also getting the right people
Yeah.
to see it, and then for them to like you can make something that people will recognize, and like what I'm trying to do is let people recognize, oh, this looks like what I imagined an NES game looked like, or like this looks like the art from the instruction manuals of an NES game like
Yeah.
brought into the
Yeah.
game. Like that's what I want people to see and to kind of get a hint of like Capcom platformers and Yoshi's Island and
Yep.
Super Mario and all of that. But like then from there you also have to get those people to see it, which is yeah, very, very difficult. I think it involves just like getting help also, like
Mm-hmm.
talking to other people that know how to know about these things, and also just being involved in different communities yourself, like online communities, and
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I love how
it's
you
tough though.
said, this is how I imagined these classic games to look. The reason that's funny to me is because me and my brother, we recently booted up Yoshi's Island on Super Nintendo and Donkey Kong, and it's like, these games are so bad. Like, they're great games, obviously, and they're really fun, but they're rough. I mean, the funny thing about those games is we got to make better games because
Yeah,
people's attention span is so much lower because, well, I mean, like Yoshi's Island, to buy that game, I think it was like $60 in the 90s. I'm not
yeah,
so sure, but I
probably.
think it was like pretty
Yeah, it had the
expensive.
Super Effects 2 chip in it, right? So it was probably pretty expensive.
Right. And that's crazy. Like, game prices haven't really changed. I mean, they've gone way down. Like, I'm assuming you're going to do
Yeah,
$15 to $20 for this game.
yeah, probably $20 target.
Yeah, and when you spent $60 on a cartridge, and that was like the only game you played, you better beat that game. I mean, especially my parents are like, you better beat this game because I just spent $60, which is like the equivalent of like $100 now or something.
Yeah,
So there was a lot. Those games, they they got away with a lot of garbage. Obviously, clearly, they're innovative and amazing technological feats, but the standard is much higher now, and it's clear. Like with your game here, I'm looking at something that's much prettier than Yoshi's Island. Honestly, is it
Oh,
hand
thank
drawn?
you. Yeah, it's all I draw it all. I've got my iPad right here on my desk. Actually, you can just kind of see the corner of it. I draw everything in an app called Procreate, which I highly recommend, by the way. It's $10. If you have an iPad with an Apple Pencil, it's such a nice app, and I do all the animation and everything
You
in
said
there because
Procreate.
yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna pull that
Procreate.
up really quick so my audience can see that.
Yeah, big recommend for that software because I bought this, again getting to budgeting. I got this iPad with the Apple Pencil on eBay used for I think like 250 bucks. Spent $10 on software. There's my art pipeline. Like that's how I do all the drawing and animation.
I mean, I'll be honest, dude. That sounds time consuming, but it's paying off. I
Yes.
mean, your game looks incredible. It's worth it. It's not that it's not worth it. It's kind of a big risk. I'll be honest. It's a big risk.
Yeah, it really is because like I said, I've been working on this for a while, and there's I'm shooting for end of next year because there's still I have the tech and everything. Like I have a game there, but there's just so much drawing and animating I need to do
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to be doing for the next year.
Okay, so we've got like a. You said you're really good at budgeting. Are you good at scheduling? And how's your skill with milestones and all that?
Um, I feel like I'm pretty good at that, but it's actually something I try not to do too much of.
Wow.
Um, because the way I approach this is like the whole like full-time game dev thing is like I need to ensure I don't get sick of this and that I don't like get sick of the project.
Yeah.
And so I try to always make sure I'm like enjoying it and I'm
Yeah.
working on something fun. So I do a lot of jumping around between things. And so I try to kind of like work on whatever I want to work on right then.
Yeah.
That's not always achievable. Like this year has just been like going really hard on the Kickstarter campaign and marketing. But most of the time I'd be like, you know what, I really want to work on like the save system for the game. So I'm just gonna go build that because that sounds really fun to do right now. And that's how I'm able to like keep it fun and fresh and like work on this for a few years, like basically with my head down, like with very little feedback.
Yeah.
Which I think, talking to friends of mine who seem like mystified that I'm able to do that, I think maybe isn't for everyone. And also like if I were trying to like be really good about scheduling, treating this as if I were working back at my working as an engineer where we have all the sprints and you have these cards you have to drag through the Kanban board. I do use like a Kanban board, but I'm not like
What kind of board is that? Say that again.
oh sorry, a Kanban board. It's kind of like where you take stickies and move them through columns. Like you have a sticky that's
Oh,
a
like
task and you're
Trello.
like, okay, this is in to do, and now I'm working on it, and now it's done. Like you just
Okay,
kind
so
of move
let's
it
let's
across.
type that in. I'm gonna search it. I've never heard the
Oh,
word Okay,
Kanban. I believe it's like a
Kanban.
Japanese word. Yeah.
I wonder if my audience is probably like, Thomas is so stupid that he doesn't
I
know this.
think that comes out of like Toyota, like their
Okay, so
sort
it's
of
like
like revolution of
Monday.com.
the. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Monday.com is
yeah, like
one.
Jira, Atlassian, that sort of
Also,
stuff.
UpClick. I think ClickUp.
Upclick, yeah, click up, click up, click.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's one. That's the one that I'm gonna start using is ClickUp.
yeah,
So these are great. I mean, this is so important. And some of you listening might this you just glaze over and you're like, I'm not interested. But this is gonna like, okay, let's say you make $100,000 on a Kickstarter campaign. This will ensure using a Kanban board. It's going to ensure that you don't go over budget and then suddenly find yourself maybe in debt or in debt to your Kickstarter backers or in debt to a publisher. And by debt, I just mean you have a game that's not completed, you have no money. How are you going to finish it? Right? When you have everything laid out like this, it's super duper important. So I totally agree that this is a necessary. It's kind of an evil, like a necessary evil. It's not fun,
yeah,
but it's important.
yeah. I also one other one that a lot of people might use if assuming you're using GitHub for
Yeah. Oh yeah.
for your code, they have this built in called projects. I think you might have to have a paid account, but
No way.
it's kind of the same thing. It's like really it's great for if it's just like one or two people where it doesn't have a lot of details. But if you just need to write things on a post-it and drag it through columns,
Yeah.
GitHub has that as well.
Is
But
it source graph? No, it's not source graph. Let's see
no,
here.
it's part of the projects. I forget what it's
Project
called.
boards. Hmm.
Project boards. That's it. Yeah,
Okay, I'm looking at it right now.
yeah. So I that's how I've mostly done this sort of stuff.
Ooh. Oh,
Um,
okay. I'm looking at it right now. It looks a lot like Trello.
yeah. Trello. It's another one, right? I think
Sweet.
it's a little more bare bones, right? You're not going to get the features, but those are designed for large teams. And if you're just like making a game with you and maybe a friend,
Mm-hmm.
then something like this might be,
Yeah.
if you already have a paid account.
Okay, so let's really quick jump to production. Okay,
Mhm.
I want to know. I understand your art method, but let's talk about software and code assets. I'll
Yeah.
just sort of give you the floor.
Yeah, this is like the stuff I actually enjoy the most.
Yeah.
I think people tend to get surprised because it's like clearly I've spent a lot of time on the art of Little Nemo, but I care a lot about like the quality of the code as well, making everything like feel really good and like be snappy, precise, as bug free as possible, um, and um, and actually, when I made this demo for content creators, I had some bugs in it that popped up right away, and because I hadn't really done user testing, so I was inadvertently making user tests out of the content creators. But the nice thing was like I was able to fix those right away because I have kind of focused on building out a scale like a scalable solution within Unity. So I use Unity, um, and I'm using just kind of give like the ground floor of everything. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
like URP, so their universal rendering pipeline. I use Shader Graph to do the shaders, and I'm using Visual Studio Code, which will come. I think that comes bundled with it for all the writing of scripts and code and stuff. Um, and I'm also using a one of the critical pieces of software I use is called Rewired,
Okay.
which I'm a big fan of gamepad support, and that is something it's
It's an
something you can just
asset.
plug in. What's that?
It's an asset from the asset store.
Yes, this is an asset store. I think it's
Okay.
like $60, and you get like just out of the box support for basically any controller you can imagine.
I've got it pulled
It's
up
really nice.
here. $45. Cool.
Oh, it's even cheaper now.
763 5-star reviews. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, I know Unity has recently
Yeah,
overhauled their input
they have.
system, and I haven't actually used that yet. It seems like it's probably much more in the right direction, but the Rewire does a lot of stuff out of the box for you. I think that'll make it really nice. So that's kind of like my uh, programming context. And then yeah, I've I've probably over-engineered a lot of the game. Like a lot of the stuff I would do, or a lot of stuff I've done is exactly what I would tell like somebody else not to do.
Right.
And I've done it because it's like I was saying, like this is how I keep it fun for myself is like something that's like kind of silly and like you would, if you're playing the demo for Little Nemo, you would have no idea this is the case, but like it's all like a custom physics solution that I've built. Um, and that was
Dude,
because
you
I,
are
I
like
wanted
my
that
worst enemy.
fine.
Seriously. Like I worked with and by the way, it's actually
Don't do
it's
this.
actually a
Don't do this.
compliment. Okay, so hold on. So you're my worst enemy. I worked with someone just like you on Neversong, like identical to
Oh
you.
no.
And
Oh no.
he and I butted heads so much because I'm like, why do we need a custom physics engine? Why? And he's like, well, so it makes it scalable and like I can actually make more in the long run. And I'm just like, no, let's just download a character controller and call it a day. But he was right. He was right. It turned out that it was very, very much worth it, especially financially for that game. So it's hard for me. My brain is like, let's get it done. I'm like
Right.
all about getting things done. So I find it's funny but it's a good thing. You've got, what is it? This is probably a terrible example, but like Captain Kirk is that Kirk and Spock. They're totally different people.
Oh,
They're totally different people, but they're the
yeah,
dream team, right?
yeah.
So that's we would probably make a great game, you and I, but we would probably be pissed at each other the whole time.
No, because I think I would agree with you. Because like really, the right solution, in my opinion, was like do it the quick and actually what I and this is true to in some ways. Like I did start with the default Unity solutions, and I grew into my own physics solution as I wanted to work on it. Right, like I said, like that was for me to keep it fun, and but I think ultimately, like you were saying, it does that is one of those things like I don't recommend it. I think it depends on like what level of polish you're going for in the game, and I
Yeah.
think and how difficult it is to get there because you could probably get there with like the default implement like physics solutions that Unity offers. But if you really want fine controls over every little detail and you want to be able to go in and make changes without like creating a lot of side effects, that's one of those things where you just kind of have to have a code stack that you've built yourself and you understand for you to be able to make those changes and know like, okay, I can change this and it's not going to break everything else.
Okay. So let me ask you this then: which shader graph, as an example, do you feel like shader graph you really need to use? Like, should my audience be like, oh, I guess I got to learn shader graph to make a 2D game? Is that one of those things where it's like maybe I could get away with not using it?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't need shader graph. I mean, honestly, you don't need any shaders. You can just like if you're just making a 2D game, just use like the 2D lighting and use the default lit and unlit shaders that come for your that like come baked in with Unity and you can make something that looks amazing. If you want to start getting into like cool effects and stuff, like I have this material in Little Nemo that's called the Oblivion, and I
I'm
needed
looking
that
at
to
it. I think
look
is it the space?
yeah, it kind of
Yeah.
looks like outer space, but it's got like parallax layers. So
Yeah.
some of the layers look as if they're like closer to the camera than the
Yeah.
material itself is. And so if you want to do anything like that, you might want to get comfortable with shader graph. And what I would say is like it's not for everybody, but like I had a lot of fun learning that. Like I had zero shader experience, like again, I'm coming into all of this stuff fresh, just like with my kind of like engineering foundational understanding, but I knew nothing about shaders really.
Yeah.
So learning shader graph was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
Okay. Let's talk really quickly about the 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 thing that baffles me and is kind of giving me a panic attack right now is these animations. Um, can you tell us a little bit about your animation process? Because
Uh,
I'm a tweening guy. I'm like, I need I need bones. I want to manipulate my single sprite, my mesh. I don't want to do sprite animation, and this is frame by frame sprite animation. So can you tell me a little bit about this? How do you keep everything scaled properly and
yeah,
uniform?
it's I don't have a good answer for this in that like the answer is like it's really hard, right? Like it's a lot of work. I don't recommend anyone does it. Like I think there's a reason that like these tweening and skeletal animation tools exist is because they're really great both in terms of like it's easy to learn how to use them um and build animations with them, but also like if you need to go and say like, oh, actually that animation was wrong, I need to go like tweak it. You just move the bone a little bit and then
Mm-hmm.
you fix your animation. That is a wildly different proposition if you've hand animated everything. So you kind of I need to go in. Um, I it took a while to kind of like settle on everything. So for the longest time, my game was like very kind of sketched in.
Yeah.
Everything was just kind of like thrown in. I would scale them, however. But ultimately, I what I needed to do was kind of settle on a like pixels per unit target, and I stick to that. And I try to, sometimes it's fine to fudge things a little bit, but generally I try to draw my assets targeting a specific, pixels per unit, which allows me to make sure like line widths are consistent through different sprites and background elements and such. Um, and yeah, I use again like Procreate or I'm sure there's if you have other animation software you're comfortable with. Um, you just kind of like sketch in the animation, then draw each frame, one at a time. It's very time consuming. But the reason ultimately I did that is I just really enjoy it when other games do that. And I was like, I love that. I want to do that. And I think the game that really, really sold me on this was the Dragon's Trap remake by Lizard Cube,
Say that
which
one more time. Dragon's Trap. I haven't heard of this.
yeah, the Dragon's Trap. It's a
Okay,
it's
I'm
a
gonna look it up.
remake. It's Wonder Boy 3, I think, remade. It's like on the Nintendo Switch, and other consoles, but the company Lizard Cube
Gotcha.
produced that.
Okay, I've got it pulled
And
up here.
yeah, it's just like gorgeous hand animations at like, between 15 and 30 frames per second. And yeah, I was like, I want to, I'm not going to be as good at animating as Benfica, who's the artist there, but he's a professional. I'm just kind of like, I have a degree in painting, but I don't, you know, I'm not a professional artist.
Your game
So
looks very similar. You've done a very good job.
thank you. That's like every once in a while someone will bring that up, and it's like the biggest compliment for me if they see that
Well,
in there. Because
we're you and I and most game developers, we're really good at tearing ourselves down and underselling ourselves. You know,
yeah,
even now I'm surprised when I get an email from a publisher and they're like, "Hey, we might want to buy your game," and it's like, I'm so surprised. Like, really? I thought my game was crap, and they're like, "Of course it's not crap." Uh,
yeah,
it's
it's
really easy to undersell yourself, and that's a problem because like if you ever got approached by a publisher, dude, you need to make sure you're getting top dollar because your game looks great.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. It's important to like know, how valuable you are because like I haven't had a lot of conversations with publishers, but I know, if I choose to go that route of getting a publisher versus like doing it all independently, is like, yeah, I'll need to go in kind of like understanding the value of the game and make sure I'm not, getting, that I'm getting like the best deal that I can.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, I think I'm intrigued. I think you've done a great job here. I think that pretty much wraps up the podcast. Is there anything else you wanted to share? I mean, really quick before you share anything, I just want to tell my audience, go support Little Nemo on Kickstarter. The link is below. And I believe by the time we post this podcast, man, I'm thinking, well, let's figure out. Okay, how many days do you have left right now?
We're at 8 days.
You have 8 days left. So what I'll do, yeah, this will probably go live on like the second to last day of the campaign. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
if,
hopefully you'll
if
get a
people
little.
can see it before it's over, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
No. So yeah, I got a little podcast schedule, so I got to make sure I have room for other podcasts. But yeah, guys, support Little Nemo on Kickstarter. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience, David?
I think again, I'll kind of like just kind of say like I think the route I've taken is kind of a strange one, and like I would do a lot of things differently to continue to rein in scope. I think in setting out to make this game, I was thinking like I'm going to spend a year to make a game, and now I've been working on it for a few years. So just keep that in mind. Like even though people were drilling into my head, this is going to take longer and be more difficult than you realize. I still, even while trying to cut scope, still
Yeah.
had this problem. So like, I based this on public domain to reduce scope in terms of trying to need to come up with new IP. I, tried to work in an established genre, so I didn't need to spend too much time finding the fun. Um, and still, it's just, I managed to make it take a really long time. So just, I think be really critical of your plan and
Yeah.
and just know it's going to take a lot longer and be a bit more difficult. So prepare for that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good idea. It's a lot like construction. It's kind of a random tangent here, but me and my wife were looking at building a house, and the builder was like, "You're going to need a $70,000 slush fund," meaning it might cost $70,000 more than what we budget. And that's especially true now just because of the economy and supply and
Yeah.
demand issues. So, or supply issues. So, point being, the same is true with your game. You kind of need a slush fund. You need to go, yeah, I can get it done in a year, but maybe give me 6 extra months. Give it to yourself. Just this sort of margin of error, because it all adds up slowly.
Yeah. Yeah, my original plan was to just get this game out completely self-funded, not even do a Kickstarter. And it still, took long enough that I was like,
I
okay,
know.
I need to start looking at some funding. And I mean, part of that was also bringing other people on board to help and being able to pay them.
Yeah.
But it was also just like I'm taking too long with this, and I need I need those funds to like kind of help get this across the finish line. So
Cool.
yeah, have your slush fund
Yeah,
ready,
your
or
slush
at
fund.
least
That's
if you
right.
don't have a plan to generate the funds you need.
Yeah. All right, buddy. This is amazing. You're doing a great job. It looks
Thanks so
beautiful.
much.
One of the
Thank you.
best Kickstarter campaigns I've ever seen, other than my campaigns. It's great. I'm kidding. I was actually looking at it and I was like, man, he's just destroying my campaigns. It's really good. So anyway, I'll let you
Thank
go,
you.
man. I'm gonna run an outro here, and then I'll
Okay,
see you on Discord after this call. Okay.
great.
All right. See you in a second.
Right.
Get over here. Hey, thanks for watching. By the way, if you haven't downloaded that free 2D game kit below, click below. It's my treat to you. I used this game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and I actually got to play it with him in front of his audience, which was really cool. This game kit is totally free. It's my treat to you, and you can use it however you want. You can make a commercial game and make $1 million off this game kit. I don't care. Or you could just use it for a hobby project. It's my treat to you. And by the way, if you haven't clicked like, that would mean a ton to me. Hit subscribe. And also, this is important, hit that notification bell. Here's why. If you get notified of when I'm live, you can watch me make my next game and let me know in the chat what you think about the game or any ideas you have. And you might just show up. Your chat might just show up in the next video that I upload. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye. I love you too.